Welcome to the magical world of bedtime stories. Tonight, you'll hear a captivating legend about gods who created the sky, the earth, and the sun itself. Let yourself sink into the quiet of the night and allow ancient myths to reveal their secrets just for you. In the beginning, there was only silence. The silence was not empty, it was deep, thick, ancient. It pressed from every side, swallowing any notion of sound or light. There was no sky, no earth, no wind, no memory of form or voice. Only the endless, unbroken darkness, an abyss older than any dream. Yet in the heart of that stillness, a single drop of light trembled, like the first breath of a world waiting to be born. In that primeval shadow, where even hope did not yet flicker, a presence began to stir. It was the first tremor in the fabric of nothingness, the first ripple through the sleeping world. The darkness was not lifeless, it was waiting. Slowly, as if woken by an ancient song, two great shapes emerged from the void. They were not human, nor beast, nor spirit, but something vaster, timeless and immense. Their names would echo through eternity, Izanagi and Izanami. They stood together at the border between everything and nothing, where all beginnings must take their first breath. Above them yawned an endless dark, below them churned a swirling void, restless and hungry. Between their hands shimmered the first bridge, thin and silver, arched between worlds that did not yet exist. In their grasp, Izanagi held the jeweled spear of creation. Its blade gleamed with a cold, pale light, as though it remembered suns that had never yet risen. He lowered the spear into the swirling void, its tip vanishing into the unknown. When he lifted it again, droplets clung to its edge, each one shining with a hidden promise. As those drops fell, they formed islands, each born in silence and shadow. At first, they were barren and raw, stones in the endless night. But as Izanagi and Izanami gazed upon them, their voices rose, deep and solemn, older than thunder. Their words shaped the land, summoned winds that sang across empty plains, and coaxed the first rivers to spill from stone and vanish into mist. The wind began to hum, gentle at first, like the memory of a lullaby. From that song, forests awoke. The first trees unfolded, stretching roots into the newborn earth. Mountains rose, sharp and proud, their peaks catching the faintest glimmer of something like hope. Rivers sparkled in the moonless dark, etching the land with silver threads. As the world grew, so did the power of Izanagi and Izanami's voices. From the meeting of their wills, new beings began to stir, gods, each shaped by the breath of their creators. Some were as restless as the sea, others, calm as the mountain's shadow. But among them, three shone brightest. First came Amaterasu, the goddess of the sun. Her birth was a gentle warmth in the heart of the void, a slow blossoming of light. Where her gaze fell, shadows retreated, and the first golden dawn spilled across the islands. The world was still young and trembling, but in her presence, it began to find courage. Flowers bent towards her, rivers glimmered with new life, and the silence was filled with laughter. Next was Tsukuyomi, the moon god. His arrival was quiet, almost secret. He brought with him the silver hush of night, the comfort of cool shadows and the promise of dreams. His light was not as bold as Amaterasu's, but it was steady, patient. Under his watch, the world learned to rest, to heal, to hold its breath and remember. Last came Susanoo, the god of storm and sea. His birth was a sudden rush, a roar that broke the hush, wild and unpredictable. His eyes flashed with lightning, his laughter was thunder. He swept across the islands with wind and rain, carving deep valleys and stirring the restless waves. Where he walked, chaos and life followed close behind. The children of Izanagi and Izanami were as different as day from night, sun from storm. Yet the world needed each of them, light and shadow, calm and wildness, warmth and cold. Seeing this, Izanagi knew their gifts could not remain unclaimed. Standing tall, his voice echoing through the new creation, he divided the world among his children. To Amaterasu, he gave the sky, the vault of heaven, to light with her radiant fire. To Tsukuyomi, he gave the night and the gentle moon, to guide dreams and soften darkness. To Susanoo, he granted the rolling seas and the wildness of the storm, to rule over wind and water. And so, for the first time, the world had shape, a harmony of order and chaos, sunlight and shadow. But beneath this fragile peace, something else stirred. Even as the gods received their gifts, the air quivered with a faint unease. A whisper drifted through the young world, slipping beneath the laughter, curling in the spaces between heartbeats. For even in a world so newly awakened, the seeds of future storms had already been sown. And so, as a distant wind began to rise and the last echoes of creation faded, a faint and trembling music lingered in the air, a warning that the night, though conquered, was never truly gone. High above the newborn world, where the air shimmered with untold possibilities, stood a palace unlike any ever dreamed by mortals or gods. Its walls were woven from the purest clouds, transparent and ever-shifting, draped in veils of morning mist. Towers rose and fell with the wind, catching the first hints of gold before the sun had even dawned. The floors glowed with a gentle, golden light, as if 1,000 dawns lay just beneath their surface, ready to rise with each new day. Here, in this sanctuary above the world, lived Amaterasu, the goddess of the sun, whose light could awaken even the sleeping stones. Her presence filled the halls with warmth and serenity. The silence here was the silence of dawn itself, peaceful, expectant, sacred. Sometimes, the only sounds were the soft chiming of unseen bells, the gentle breath of the wind as it played among the high pillars, and the faint echo of a distant world below, still shrouded in shadow. On this morning, Amaterasu moved through her radiant palace in quiet contemplation. She watched the darkness far below, feeling the pulse of life stirring in the new earth. The beauty of her home could not shield her from the weight of her purpose. She was the sun, the breath of dawn, called to light even the coldest valleys where shadows clung like frightened children. Then, from the shimmer of clouds at the edge of her palace, a figure approached. His footsteps were nearly silent, barely disturbing the golden light beneath his feet. It was Izanagi, her father, the wise and ancient god whose voice had shaped the first mountains and whose will had called her into being. He stood tall and gentle, pride shining in his eyes, his voice a deep, calm river. "My daughter," he said, "you are the sun of this world, its soul and its warmth. Every morning, the world will turn its face to you, longing for your light." From within his robes, he drew a mirror, delicate, round, its surface flawless as still water. It shimmered with a light all its own, catching the colors of dawn, yet holding them gently, as if afraid to outshine the coming day. "I give you, Amaterasu, the Yada mirror," Izanagi continued, his voice filled with both love and reverence. "It is the symbol of truth and purity. Wear it always, that its light may never leave this world. Let it remind you that every gaze it returns is more than a reflection, it is the soul, laid bare." Amaterasu bowed her head, accepting the mirror with hands that trembled only slightly. Her words came softly, carried by the hush of morning. "I will keep your gift, Father, and I will watch over the world. I will be its light, its guardian, as long as I am able." She hung the mirror near her heart, and as she did, a new warmth blossomed through the heavens, a light so gentle that even the coldest shadows softened. The Yada mirror did more than reflect the surface, it revealed the truth at the core of all who gazed within it. Its presence filled the palace with an even brighter glow, and as Amaterasu stepped onto her balcony, that glow spilled out into the waiting world below. The first sunrise was not sudden. It crept over the edge of the earth, golden and trembling, cautious as a child's first breath. The light poured down valleys and hills, painting every blade of grass, every silent tree, with the colors of hope. The rivers glittered with fire, birds woke and filled the air with song. Flowers turned their faces upward, breathing in the gentle warmth. For the first time, people and spirits alike lifted their eyes to the sky, wonder blooming on their faces. They did not yet know the name of the goddess, nor could they see her high above, but they felt her presence, the soft caress of her warmth, the joy that kindled in their hearts. Some bowed in awe, others whispered prayers. Even the wind seemed to carry her laughter, gentle and reassuring. Within her golden palace, Amaterasu felt the world's hope resting upon her shoulders, a shimmering weight, fragile and precious. Pride filled her, a quiet, steady flame. Yet beneath it, a faint worry flickered. How long will I be able to bring hope to all that lives? She wondered, her thoughts echoing in the vast halls. Can my light reach even the deepest, most forgotten places? Will I always be enough? The mirror at her breast reflected her gaze, calm and unflinching. She took a deep breath, letting the light fill her, letting it spread through the palace, through the sky, and down to every corner of the waking world. As the sun climbed higher, peace settled across the land. Children laughed, rivers danced, and life unfolded in new colors. For a time, the world knew only joy, only the promise of light. But even in the fullness of day, in the softest glow of morning, shadows lingered at the edge of the light, quiet, patient, waiting. And as the voice of the storyteller fell to a hush, only the faintest echo remained. While the sun shone in the heavens, the world rejoiced. Yet in the shadow of that light, a storm was already gathering, one that no heart yet dared to imagine. Beneath the great arch of the sky, where even the sunlight struggled to hold its place, stretched a sea as wild as the dreams of ancient gods. Here, endless waves rose and fell beneath restless, rolling clouds, heavy and dark, stitched with flickers of distant lightning. The wind screamed and howled, twisting the world into chaos. At the edge of light and shadow, where the deep met the unknown, reigned Susanoo, the lord of storms. He strode upon the surface of the churning water, his footsteps sending tremors through the depths. The sea bent to his will, yet he found no comfort in its endless roar. His eyes burned with longing, his hands clenched around nothing but the emptiness of power. He was the master of storms, the voice behind every thunderclap and the fury behind every crashing wave. Yet in his heart, a tempest raged fiercer than any upon the water. Why must the world look to me with fear, while they lift their songs to the sun? Susanoo's thoughts echoed through the crashing winds. Why does the light belong only to others, while I am left to rule over shadows and rage? Even as he called forth the thunder and commanded the lightning to dance, Susanoo could not find joy. Where his sister Amaterasu brought hope and laughter, he brought fear and destruction. The world greeted her with songs, while his own coming was met with silence and trembling. The waves climbed higher, their crests sharp and wild, as if mirroring the turmoil within their master. Susanoo's voice rose in a furious cry, a sound that split the air, shaking the heavens themselves. In answer, a mighty storm surged forth, racing across the open sea. Lightning split the sky, thunder rolled like war drums, and the ocean heaved as if the world itself would break apart. Even in the halls of the gods, the storm was felt. Dark clouds swept across the sky, swallowing the gentle gold of Amaterasu's light. For a heartbeat, even the sun's radiance seemed to falter, and a shadow crept across the land. Yet not all in the sea were swept away by his rage. From the hidden grottos and winding currents, the spirits of the ocean gathered. They approached Susanoo, their forms half seen, shimmering shapes of foam and mist, voices as soft as the tide, eyes old and wise. Great Susanoo, they spoke together, voices woven with sorrow and understanding. You are the master of storms, and with a single word, you can shatter the peace of the world. But storms do not choose their victims. The wind and the wave will destroy friend as well as foe. Is this what you wish? Is there not another path, a way to find balance in your heart? For a moment, the god of storms listened. He saw the pain in the eyes of his people, the fear that shadowed even the bravest spirit. The weight of his power pressed upon him, cold and heavy. Yet instead of comfort, their words only stoked the fire within him. Balance? Susanoo spat, his voice a crack of thunder. Was I born to hide my strength? To watch the world rejoice in my sister's light, while I am left to cradle the dark and the storm? The spirits fell silent, their forms trembling in the wind. One by one, they faded back into the sea, leaving Susanoo alone amid his fury. He stood at the center of his dominion, the storm raging around him, yet his heart felt emptier than ever. No song of birds, no gentle laughter, only the endless roar of wind and the bitter taste of envy. The sky above seemed to press down, as if urging him to choose, remain a prisoner of his own anger, or seek a new path. A decision rose in his mind, sharp and clear. If the world would not see his worth among the waves, perhaps it would learn his power elsewhere. He would not be content to linger in the shadows, to rule only the edge of the world. If light was to belong to his sister, he would confront her, face to face. He would climb the path to the heavens, not in search of battle, but for answers, for meaning. As he turned his back to the endless sea, the waves seemed to hush, as if sensing their master's farewell. The wind, too, quieted, carrying only the faintest echo of his sorrow. For all his might, Susanoo felt a pang of loss, a yearning for something he could not name. With a final glance over his restless kingdom, he set his eyes upon the sky. Clouds gathered at his heels, the breath of the storm swirling about him. Each step toward the heavens left ripples in the world below, a warning, a promise, a threat. And so, Susanoo ascended, bearing the taste of salt and thunder, his heart divided between longing and rage. He approached the celestial gates, the storm within him unspent. No one in the heavens could know what his coming would mean, nor how deeply it would shake the fate of gods and mortals alike. The storyteller's voice fell, touched by a shadow of unease. And so Susanoo rose to the gates of heaven, bringing with him the breath of the storm. None could foresee that this meeting would change the destiny of gods and the world itself. Above the clouds, where the sky shimmered with unspoken songs, the gates of heaven stood tall and silent. They were not made for strangers, massive and old, their silvered arches had long watched over peace and harmony. Yet now, a strange shadow crept toward them, trailing the breath of the sea and the memory of distant storms. Susanoo climbed higher, his form wrapped in a mist that caught the chill of his ocean home. Each step left a trembling in the air, as though the wind itself paused in uncertainty. The great gates groaned beneath his touch, opening slowly with a sound that echoed through the halls of the gods, a sound heavy with unfamiliar promise. Few are those who cross these gates, whispered the spirits that guarded the threshold. Their eyes, bright as morning dew, followed every move of the stranger. The very light seemed to shrink from Susanoo, his presence dimming the golden glow of the palace. Within her radiant halls, Amaterasu felt the first shadow touch her heart. She stood at the highest balcony, where light poured like rivers, and sensed the world below turning cold. The sky that had always sung with joy was now heavy, uncertain. She drew her robe tighter, and with a careful grace, descended to meet her brother. As Susanoo's shape emerged from the mist, Amaterasu stepped forward, her face lit with both welcome and caution. Her eyes, usually soft with warmth, now glinted with the steel of wariness. The palace behind her seemed to hold its breath, rivers of light curled around her feet like silent guardians, bracing for them. Their voices met in the stillness, quiet and tense, a melody waiting for a storm. "Brother," Amaterasu began, her words gentle yet edged with unease. "What brings you from the farthest depths of the sea to the sacred light of the heavens?" Susanoo's answer was sharp, carried on a wind that tasted of salt and longing. "I seek an answer, sister. Am I not as worthy of the light as you are? Must I forever dwell among shadows and storms?" For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Amaterasu searched her brother's face, so familiar, yet now shadowed by something wild and restless. She sensed the storm within him, felt its hunger gnawing at his pride. Her heart ached with an old, unspoken love, but also with doubt. Still, she would not close the door on him. Summoning her strength, she called upon her faithful companions, gods of wind and music, keepers of order and peace. They gathered around her, silent sentinels, their presence a gentle warning. Here, in the palace of light, no darkness could reign alone. The room filled with a shimmering glow, every corner bathed in a soft radiance that seemed to bend away from Susanoo. Shadows clung to his steps, a silent echo of his true nature. Where Amaterasu walked, warmth followed, where Susanoo stood, a coolness lingered, as if the storm outside had crept indoors. Amaterasu tried to offer a smile, a bridge to the brother she once knew. "It has been long since you came to these halls. I am glad to see you, Susanoo. The world is not whole without you." But Susanoo's reply was uneven, his mood shifting like the tides. Sometimes his voice was open, yearning for acceptance. At other moments, it cut with the sharpness of a coming gale. I am not here for gladness, sister. I am here to prove my worth, to show that my light is no less than yours. Around them, the gods of heaven watched with anxious eyes. The spirits of the wind paused in their flight, even the smallest animals hid from the uneasy hush. The very stones of the palace seemed to shiver, uncertain which force would prevail, light or storm. And so the palace, once filled with the laughter of morning, was now thick with unspoken words. Every glance, every breath, hinted at a conflict yet to be born. Even Amaterasu, with all her calm, felt her heart race, a quiet warning in her blood. As the meeting of brother and sister stretched on, the tension grew, like a sky too still before thunder. Words, soft as they were, cracked with the promise of something greater to come. The air itself seemed to pulse, heavy with anticipation. And the storyteller's voice fell to a whisper, weaving shadow and light. Their meeting brought no relief. Instead, it was a silent storm, gathering strength in every glance and every unspoken word. The world waited, holding its breath, sensing that soon, everything would change. After the silent storm of their meeting, the heavens held their breath. Amaterasu, wise beyond her years, felt the danger lurking behind every glance and every word. She knew, if open conflict were to ignite between them, the very order of the heavens could shatter. A world divided between light and storm would be doomed to endless night. And so, seeking peace without surrender, she turned to her brother, her voice calm but steady as stone. "Brother," she said, "let us test our strength not with battle, but with creation. Let the gods themselves witness who among us is truly worthy of the light." Susanoo's eyes, stormy and restless, flashed with both suspicion and challenge. Yet the promise of proving his worth before all the heavens stirred something proud and fierce within him. He nodded, a slow smile playing on his lips, a smile that promised both rivalry and something darker. The call was sent through the celestial halls, and soon the gods gathered in the great court of the sky. There was an air of festival, bright banners and clouds laced with song, but beneath it all, a shadow flickered, an anxious waiting. Would this be a celebration of unity, or the beginning of deeper discord? At the heart of the court stood Amaterasu and Susanoo, facing one another beneath the ancient sky. Between them, they placed tokens, symbols of their essence. Amaterasu unclasped her sacred necklace, its beads glowing with an inner sunlight, the embodiment of purity and warmth. She offered it to Susanoo, the gesture both a gift and a test. "Take my jewel, brother," she said, her voice resonating like a bell. "Let it be the heart of your creation." Susanoo, in turn, drew forth his sword, the blade that commanded the tempests, sharp and fierce as the wind itself. With a careful, almost reverent motion, he placed it before Amaterasu. "And take my sword, sister," he replied, voice edged with challenge. "Let its strength forge your spirit anew." The gods watched, silent and tense, as the contest began. First, Amaterasu raised the sword in her slender hands. Its metal seemed to shimmer with a hunger for battle, yet in her grasp, the edge softened. She whispered ancient words, words older than the sky, and breathed a golden ray of sun into the blade. Light poured from her, weaving around the sword, gentling its violence. In that moment, the weapon sang not of war, but of hope. From the heart of steel, pure and radiant spirits emerged, shining beings of harmony, their laughter like dawn, their touch kind and healing. Then Susanoo stepped forward, holding the necklace, its beads cold in his storm-chilled fingers. With a shout that echoed thunder, he struck the jewels against stone, shattering them into 1,000 pieces. The shards whirled through the air, caught by winds conjured from his breath. He called upon the fury of the sea, the wrath of the clouds, and from the chaos, wild spirits burst forth, warriors of thunder and gale, their eyes flashing with untamed fire. Their voices were the roar of battle, their dance the rush of the storm. The court blazed with magic, sparks and light, wind and song. Ancient chants filled the air as the gods observed the unfolding spectacle, awe and worry mingling in their eyes. When the creation was done, all gathered to judge. The spirits born of Amaterasu were gentle and full of grace, they brought peace, healed wounds, and filled the world with inspiration. Where they stepped, flowers bloomed, rivers ran clear, and hearts felt lighter. Those born of Susanoo, by contrast, were mighty and fierce, their power undeniable, but unpredictable. They strode the skies with pride, but their joy was wild and edged with danger, their laughter could become a storm in a heartbeat. Among the assembled gods, quiet whispers passed. In Amaterasu's spirits, there is peace and order. In Susanoo's, raw strength, but also peril. The air grew heavy with judgment. Though both had shown great power, it was the harmony and purity of Amaterasu's creations that won the favor of the gods. The court was swayed, not by force, but by the promise of hope her spirits carried. Susanoo felt the verdict as a chill in his bones. Pride and fury twisted within him, deeper than before. To see his gift eclipsed by his sister's light stoked the old tempest in his soul, a storm that now threatened to break free. The celebration that followed rang hollow for some. Even as the gods feasted and sang, a cold wind swept the edges of the sky. Laughter faltered, and eyes glanced warily at the silent figure of the storm god. The storyteller's voice slowed, the music of the heavens turning somber. Light and shadow could not share the sky, and even the joyful song of the gods could not dispel the cold wind that carried the promise of another storm. The court of heaven stood in uneasy silence, its golden light trembling as though sensing a coming storm. In the heart of that silence, Susanoo stood, his shoulders broad, his breath sharp and uneven. The air around him crackled, dense with anger and shame. The bitterness of defeat gnawed at him, each word of the gods echoing in his mind like thunder. He had not triumphed over his sister. His power, wild and magnificent, had not won the favor of the sky. Inside Susanoo, a tempest brewed, fiercer than any he had cast upon the sea. He felt as if the world itself mocked him, turning its face to the sun and leaving him to the shadows. Fury surged through his veins, setting his heart ablaze. His hands curled into fists, trembling with a force he could no longer hold back. The sky darkened as if in warning. Clouds rolled in, thick and heavy, swallowing the gold of the palace. The wind, once gentle, howled in rage. Then Susanoo lifted his voice, a roar that split the heavens, a cry of pain and wrath, echoing to the farthest reaches of creation. Lightning split the clouds, thunder shook the world, and a new storm was unleashed upon the divine halls. With every step, Susanoo's anger grew. He strode into the sacred rice fields, lush, green, and golden, the pride of Amaterasu, source of life for both gods and mortals. His fury, unchecked, tore through the fields. He ripped the plants from the soil, their roots dangling, earth flying with every violent gesture. The fields, once humming with spirits and song, fell silent. Frightened spirits darted into the stalks, hiding from the storm, leaving the land bare and wounded. But even this destruction was not enough to calm the god of storms. His gaze fell upon the sacred white horse of Amaterasu, a symbol of peace and purity, cherished among all the heavens. In his rage, Susanoo seized the divine creature and hurled it into the heart of the palace court. The sound of its fall shattered the hush, an impact so terrible that even time seemed to hold its breath. A gasp swept through the halls. Amaterasu, standing among the shattered beauty of her realm, felt tears stream down her face. She did not cry out. She did not plead. Only silent grief filled her eyes as she watched the ruin unfold. The light around her flickered, dimmed by sorrow. Susanoo pressed on, his wrath a whirlwind. He stormed through the palace, shattering delicate carvings, pulling down ancient banners, breaking the relics and treasures that had kept the balance of heaven for centuries. Sacred stones were smashed, songs of harmony silenced beneath the crash of his anger. The gods, terrified, withdrew into the shadows, unwilling to confront him. Some tried to plead, their voices trembling like reeds in a gale, but no one dared stand against the storm. The palace, once radiant and alive, was left in ruins. The wind moaned through broken walls, carrying away the memory of laughter and music. Darkness spread across the sky, swallowing what little remained of the day. Amaterasu stood amid the wreckage, her soul torn. Her world, her dreams, had been crushed beneath her brother's rage. She felt not only the pain of loss, but a deeper wound, a sorrow for Susanoo himself, for the storm that ruled his heart and left no room for peace. Her light, once so strong, flickered low. In her silence, 1,000 unspoken questions hung. Why? Why could she not reach him? Was her light not enough? Was love not enough? The gods hid, the spirits wept, and even the birds of heaven fell silent. Nothing dared move in the aftermath of such destruction. Only the cold wind remained, echoing through the empty halls, a ghostly lament for what had been lost. The storyteller's voice faded, soft as dusk. When the storm at last passed, only devastation remained in heaven's halls. In that hollow silence, a decision began to form, one that would forever change the fate of gods and the world below. The halls of heaven, once alive with golden laughter and song, now lay in silent ruin. Amid the broken pillars and shattered dreams stood Amaterasu, the sun goddess, her shoulders trembling under a burden too heavy to bear. Tears streamed down her face, falling like silent rain upon the cold stones. Each drop was a memory of hope, of harmony once cherished, now swept away by the fury of her own brother. She stood there, lost and fragile, her heart torn open. The palace she had filled with warmth was nothing but a shadow of grief. Every hope she had nurtured for the world below, every promise of peace, every dream of joy, now seemed as fragile as morning dew beneath the heel of the storm. In that moment, Amaterasu felt utterly alone. The weight of shattered dreams pressing on her chest, Amaterasu turned away, each step tearing at her heart like a silent scream. Step by slow step, she walked away from the ruins of her world, the light around her frayed and unraveled with each step, like golden threads caught in the wind. Her path led her beyond the sky's edge, where the clouds clung like lost spirits. Through mists thick and silent, she moved as one in a dream, her tears tracing a trail toward the farthest reaches of the heavens. At last she reached the mouth of a hidden cave, a sacred place, known as Amaterasu, perched upon the very rim of the world. Without a word, she slipped inside, vanishing into the cool embrace of stone and shadow. As she crossed the threshold, the last golden rays curled around her, then faded. And as if the world itself were holding its breath, the light died. Darkness swept over the heavens. The sun vanished, and the world plunged into endless night. Across the land, every living thing felt the change. Flowers closed their petals and drooped, their colors lost to the shadows. Trees stood silent, their leaves trembling in the cold. Birds, robbed of morning's promise, fell mute, their songs swallowed by gloom. Even the rivers slowed, as if reluctant to move without the touch of the sun. On the earth, humans and gods alike felt a chill they could not escape. Without sunlight, fields withered, harvests failed. The warmth that had kindled laughter and hope now flickered only in memory. Fires were lit in every home and temple, small flames that flickered bravely in the night. But none could match the lost comfort of the dawn. Fear and sadness grew among the people. Some prayed, their voices rising in desperate song, begging the sun to return. Others wandered beneath the stars, shivering in the endless dusk. In the sacred groves, nature's spirits gathered together, seeking a solution, but none could pierce the darkness. Meanwhile, within her cave, Amaterasu sat alone. The light within her, once so strong, was only a faint shimmer, no brighter than a dying ember. Shadows pressed close, a quiet company for her sorrow. She wrapped her arms around her knees, listening to the silence, her tears a silent confession to the world she had left behind. Does the world truly deserve the light? She wondered. If harmony is so easily broken, what hope is there in returning? If I step forth again, will joy truly blossom, or will it only be shattered once more? Her heart, so often a beacon for others, now flickered with doubt. She became a memory of herself, a goddess hiding from her own reflection. Outside, the world waited in vain. Each moment of darkness deepened the ache in every heart. The stars, no matter how bright, could not drive away the cold. It seemed that the night would last forever. Yet in the quiet of loss, something gentle stirred. A faint hope, almost too fragile to name, kindled in the hearts of those who would not surrender. In their longing, in their silent prayers, a new resolve began to grow, soft as a whisper, but unyielding as the dawn. The storyteller's voice, almost lost to the dark, lingers. It seemed the darkness would reign for all time. But in the shadow of loss, a single spark of hope was kindling, in the hearts of those not yet ready to let go. In the unending gloom that blanketed heaven and earth, a hush fell over the halls of the gods. The once radiant sky had lost its voice, its laughter swallowed by shadows. Even the bravest spirits now walked softly, afraid their whispers might shatter what little hope remained. And yet, as the endless night deepened, the gods gathered for a council, anxious, weary, but unwilling to surrender. They came together beneath the silent arches, their faces drawn and pale. Every eye held the same desperate question: what would become of the world without the sun? On the great tables, once overflowing with bright fruits and laughter, only empty cups and scattered crumbs remained. The air, heavy and still, carried only the quiet rustle of robes, the shiver of wings, and the lonely clink of an untouched goblet. A world without the sun, the storyteller murmurs, is like a song with no voice, a home with no warmth. Panic and sorrow mixed in the quiet conversation of the gods. Some wept softly, others sat in stunned silence. Even the boldest found their spirits fading, shadows growing long within their hearts. But among them shone a single ember of hope, a gentle glow in the darkness. It was Yuzum, goddess of laughter and joy. Her hair caught what little starlight remained, and in her eyes danced sparks of stubborn mirth. Where others clung to sorrow, she held tight to her smile, light as a sunbeam. In the hush, her presence became the last spark refusing to go out. One of the oldest gods, voice brittle with grief, turned to her at last: "Yuzum, you are the last spark of our world. What are we to do?" Yuzum answered, her words as playful as the wind: "Light returns to where it is welcomed with hope. If we sit here in tears and fear, darkness will never leave us. Instead, let us greet the sun not with pleading, but with laughter, even in the heart of night." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the council, unsure, but longing for hope. Yuzum's eyes shone brighter. She leaned in, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Let's not beg Amaterasu to return. Let's surprise her. Let's dance and sing and play so wildly that she cannot help but peek out from her cave, curious about what she is missing." At first, the gods hesitated. Laughter felt like a foreign language after so much sorrow. Yet Yuzum's spirit was infectious. Slowly, curiosity sparked. Could joy truly draw back the light? There was little to lose in trying, and perhaps, just perhaps, everything to gain. With growing excitement, Yuzum outlined her plan. They would gather at the mouth of the sacred cave where Amaterasu hid. They would hang the sacred mirror, the Yada mirror, so it would catch any light that might emerge. They would decorate the trees with bright ribbons, set out fine instruments and magical cups filled with sparkling sake. Music would fill the air, laughter would ring, and at the heart of it all, Yuzum herself would perform a dance so wild and wondrous, so full of mischief and joy, that even the sorrowing sun might be tempted to look out upon the world once more. The gods, hearts quickening, moved quietly but eagerly. Some tied bright cloths to ancient branches, their colors brave against the night. Others set drums and flutes in place, their polished wood a promise of coming song. A few poured sake into delicate bowls, the scent mingling with the chill air. And at the center, just beyond the cave's stone threshold, the Yada mirror was lifted and set so it could capture and reflect the first ray of returning light. All around, the hush of anticipation grew. Eyes turned to Yuzum, their hopes hanging on her smile. Could a dance truly call back the dawn? Could laughter, in the face of darkness, be enough? As the last preparations fell into place, a strange and fragile hope blossomed in the cold gloom. The world itself seemed to hold its breath, poised on the edge of a miracle. The storyteller's voice, now threaded with a glimmer of light, continues. While darkness gripped the world, hope was being born in the heart of heaven. Yuzum, radiant and fearless, readied herself for the dance that might bring back the sun, if only the goddess would dare to look beyond her sorrow. Near the mouth of the sacred cave, where darkness clung stubbornly to every stone, Yuzum stepped lightly into the cold, waiting air. Her robes were woven with ribbons and wildflowers, each petal shimmering with dew. Tiny bells hung from her sleeves and sash, chiming with each movement, a gentle, joyful music that refused to be silenced, even by the weight of night. Around her, the gods gathered in a wide, anxious circle. Faces old as the dawn peered from behind pillars, some grim, some curious, all drawn by the wild glimmer in Yuzum's eyes. Even the shadows themselves seemed to hesitate, retreating a little from the patch of brightness Yuzum carried with her. Here, on the very threshold between light and oblivion, hope was about to take its boldest form. At first, Yuzum's feet brushed the ground in slow circles, the tiny bells on her ankles whispering secrets to the hush. Yuzum moved with slow, measured steps, her arms flowing like water, her gaze soft as dawn breaking over still waters. She circled the cave's entrance, her gaze soft, every motion careful and mysterious. For a moment, even the gods forgot to breathe. But then, with a sudden twirl, everything changed. Yuzum tossed a handful of bells high into the air, their music ringing bright and clear. Her feet stamped a wild rhythm, flowers spun from her sleeves, and her laughter bubbled up, light and infectious. She leapt and spun, her dance growing ever more daring and ridiculous. She kicked up her heels, waved her hands, made faces at the stoic gods, and hiked up her flowing robe, skipping and twirling with abandon. At first, the gods could only stare. Some frowned in confusion, others whispered among themselves. But Yuzum's joy was unstoppable, a tide of mischief and delight that swept over the gathered crowd. One by one, their lips curled into smiles. Chuckles erupted, then full laughter, ringing out across the night. Ancient gods clapped along, their eyes sparkling with relief. Even the sternest among them found themselves tossing petals into the air, surrendering to the festival spirit that Yuzum had conjured from the gloom. Music swelled around her, the musicians playing faster, brighter, flutes and drums, pipes and strings, voices rising in song. Someone poured sake, the cups clinking as laughter spilled over. A few of the braver gods joined the dance, their dignified movements giving way to wild improvisation. Jokes flew, old grudges forgotten for a moment as joy crackled through the crowd. In that instant, the storyteller's voice soothes, darkness was forgotten. Fear lost its grip. It was as if every heart rediscovered the secret sun burning within. Inside the cave, Amaterasu sat curled in the cool gloom, listening. At first, confusion filled her heart. Laughter. Music. She had expected tears, pleading, anything but this wild, joyous celebration. Her curiosity was piqued, a flicker of gold sparking in the depths of her shadowed soul. Why are they laughing in the darkness, she wondered. What could bring them such happiness without my light? What have they discovered that I have not? The dance reached its climax. Yuzum, now breathless and radiant, leapt into the very center of the crowd. With a grin, she threw her arms wide, her bells ringing, her eyes blazing with uncontainable joy. She shouted, so all, gods, spirits, even the cave's deepest shadows, could hear. Look! There is something here more beautiful than the sun goddess herself. A roar of laughter broke out, echoing down the valleys of the sky. The gods stamped their feet, clapped, cheered, and tossed more flowers. The music soared, the celebration growing wild and unstoppable. The cave's dark threshold seemed to shimmer with excitement, the barrier between night and dawn thinned by joy. Yuzum had done the impossible. In a world without sunlight, she had kindled a brighter flame, one born of courage, laughter, and hope. The spirits of the gods, once so heavy, now danced with her, their fears forgotten in the whirl of color and sound. And somewhere, deep within the cave, Amaterasu leaned forward, her sorrow loosening its hold. She could not resist the pull of that laughter, that light. A spark of wonder rose in her chest. The storyteller's voice grows quietly triumphant. Yuzum had achieved the unthinkable, for in a single, unforgettable moment, joy began to steal back into the world. Soon, the sun itself would be unable to resist, and all creation would hold its breath, waiting for the dawn. Within the cool, echoing darkness of the sacred cave, Amaterasu sat still, her knees drawn close, arms wrapped tight as if to hold together the fragile remnants of her heart. Yet outside, something extraordinary had awakened, a tide of laughter, music, and joy so vibrant, it pierced even the thickest shadow. For a long moment, Amaterasu hesitated. Doubt and hope wrestled in her soul. What could be happening out there? She wondered, a tremor of longing stirring within her. Why are they so happy, even without me? Perhaps it is time to look upon the world again, to see if light might belong once more. Slowly, uncertainly, she rose and drifted toward the cave's entrance. Each step was careful, tentative, a sunbeam breaking through layers of doubt. She paused at the threshold, peering out into a world that shimmered with unexpected color and life. Bells rang, voices sang, and in the center of it all, Susanoo danced, her joy so infectious it seemed to call forth the dawn itself. But what truly caught Amaterasu's eye was the Yata mirror, set gently before the cave. Its polished surface shimmered with all the light and hope that had been lost, and as she leaned forward, the goddess saw her reflection, not as a distant, untouchable deity, but as a part of the laughter and warmth that pulsed through the gathering. In the mirror's glow, her face softened, and the shadows within her retreated. For the first time, Amaterasu saw herself as more than the sun. She was the promise of joy, the heart of renewal, the light that belonged not just to the heavens, but to all who could hope and rejoice. From the mirror's surface, a gentle radiance blossomed, spreading in golden waves through the darkness. The cave's shadow thinned and melted away, the world held its breath, and hope stirred in every heart. Outside, the gods gasped and then erupted in joyful cries. They cheered and clapped, their faces shining with relief and gratitude. Some wept openly, others fell to their knees, giving thanks to both Susanoo for her wild courage and to Amaterasu for the gift of her return. Susanoo approached the cave's threshold, bowing low with a mischievous smile. The world cannot be happy for long without your light, great goddess. But even in darkness, your presence gave us hope. Thanks to you, we learned to find a spark of joy within ourselves. Amaterasu's heart filled with gratitude. She laughed, a sound like birds at dawn, ringing clear and bright. Thank you, Susanoo. Without you, I might never have remembered the light within me. With that, Amaterasu stepped fully from the cave. Her radiance burst forth in a flood of golden warmth, washing over the gods, the heavens, and the world below. The night, so long and heavy, vanished in a heartbeat. The sky blazed with sunlight, blue and deep as the first day. Grass unfurled, flowers opened their petals to drink the light, and rivers sparkled with new life. Birds sang their first songs since the darkness began, their voices soaring high, welcoming back the day. Everywhere, from the peaks of the mountains to the humblest village, people and gods rejoiced, lifting their faces to the sun and shouting for joy. The storyteller's voice glows with hope. The world had regained its sun. And those who had endured the long night now believed, more than ever, in the miracle of renewal. Yet high above, a shadow still lingered, for on the heavens awaited the judgment of Susanoo. With the sun restored to the heavens, order slowly returned to the celestial palace. Amaterasu, her light radiant but now tempered by sorrow and wisdom, moved through the sacred halls, guiding the gods in the work of rebuilding. Broken pillars were raised anew, songs of gratitude echoed, and the harmony between heaven and earth was slowly restored. Yet over all lingered the memory of storm and darkness, a reminder that peace, once lost, must be guarded with care. When all was set right, the gods gathered once more in solemn assembly. This time, the great council was not for celebration, but for justice. The long table stretched beneath ancient banners, and every seat was filled with figures draped in dignity and memory. Silence ruled, every whisper fell like a stone. At the center of the vast hall stood Susanoo, no longer the tempestuous lord of storms, but a man undone by sorrow. His posture, once proud, was bowed, his wild eyes, now dimmed, held only remorse. The winds that had always danced at his feet lay still. All watched, waiting. One of the eldest gods, voice deep and unyielding, broke the silence. Susanoo, you have broken the laws of heaven. You destroyed what was sacred, brought sorrow to your sister, and scattered fear among the gods. Do you repent your deeds? For a moment, Susanoo's voice was barely more than a whisper, but its truth rang through every corner of the hall. I do repent. The pain I have brought is heavier than any storm I could summon. I beg forgiveness from Amaterasu, and from all of you. A hush followed his words, heavy with the gravity of centuries. Amaterasu gazed at her brother, her eyes full of sadness, but also of compassion. She remembered not only the ruin he had caused, but the loneliness and longing that had kindled it. Within every storm, she knew, was not only the threat of destruction, but also the chance for cleansing, for rebirth. He is lost, but he is still my brother, she thought. Within every storm lies the hope of new growth. After a brief deliberation, the gods reached their verdict. The eldest rose and spoke, his words carrying both judgment and hope. You are to be exiled from the heavens, Susanoo. Only through acts of goodness upon the earth may you atone for your deeds. Until you find true harmony within your heart, you may not return to us. The words rolled through the silent hall like distant thunder, sealing his fate with the cold weight of eternity. There was no anger, only the weight of necessity. Susanoo accepted the verdict with bowed head. He turned to Amaterasu, searching her face for a final blessing. Thank you, sister, he said quietly. I will seek forgiveness, and one day, I will find the way back, to peace, to harmony, to your light. Amaterasu stepped forward, her presence gentle as the dawn. May the sun shine upon your path, brother, even if it must begin in darkness. With that, Susanoo turned from the council, his steps slow and measured. As he passed through the gates of the heavens, the doors closed softly behind him. High above, a brilliant rainbow arched across the sky, a silent promise that even after the fiercest storm, hope would return. The storyteller's voice closes the scene with a note of wonder and anticipation. Thus ended one tale of storm and forgiveness. But for Susanoo, a new journey had only just begun, a journey that would test his heart, his strength, and the possibility of redemption. Beneath the vast arc of the sky, Susanoo descended alone, leaving behind the majesty of heaven and the shimmering colors of the celestial rainbow. His feet touched the wild earth, the clouds parted above, and the world lay before him, untamed forests, steep mountain passes, and winding rivers glimmering like threads of fate. Here, the voices of gods faded, and only the music of nature and the quiet suffering of mortals remained. Susanoo walked as a stranger through these lands. He felt the absence of divine power, the weight of exile heavy on his shoulders. Everywhere he looked, he saw a world struggling to endure. Fields stood barren, the crops had withered in drought or drowned in sudden floods. Villages were hushed, their people gaunt with fear. Even the wind seemed to carry the echo of old prayers, desperate for a miracle that never arrived. It did not take long for Susanoo to discover the source of the people's terror. A monstrous shadow loomed over the land, Yamata no Orochi, the eight-headed serpent. Each year, the beast would rise from its hidden lair, demanding a sacrifice. One by one, families had lost their children, until hope was a memory and grief the only song left to sing. He watched as villagers gathered at their shrine, candles flickering in the cold dusk. They prayed to the gods of the sky, their voices trembling in the dark. None suspected that the storm god himself walked among them, a fallen deity, seeking his own redemption. For the first time in his long existence, Susanoo felt a different kind of longing, a desire not to rule or to conquer, but to protect. He remembered the chaos he had unleashed in the heavens, the pain he had left behind. Was this, he wondered, his chance to become something new? I brought suffering and chaos above. Could I become a shield down here, for those who need me most? The thought lingered as he watched the faces of hungry children and weeping mothers. That evening, his wandering led him to a humble house on the edge of the village. There, an old couple lived with their last remaining daughter, Kushinada. Her eyes were dark with worry, but she carried herself with quiet bravery. Over a simple meal, the old man shared their tragedy. Every year, Yamata no Orochi takes a daughter from our house. We have lost them all. Now it is Kushinada's turn. If you are truly a god, help us. You are our last hope. There was no accusation in his voice, only the heavy weight of sorrow. Susanoo sat in silence, feeling the fear and responsibility settle into his bones. At last, he turned to Kushinada, his voice soft and steady. I do not want to be the bringer of ruin any longer. Let me be your protector. I promise you, I will stand between you and the darkness. For a moment, hope flickered in Kushinada's eyes, and her parents' grief softened to relief. A new resolve took root in Susanoo's heart. This would not be an easy path, but perhaps it was the one he had always needed. With dawn, Susanoo began to prepare for the coming trial. He studied the riverbank where the serpent would emerge, mapping its bends and the places where shadows lingered longest. He wove strong ropes from reeds and branches, set clever traps among the stones, and brewed a magical sake so powerful that even a dragon's rage might be subdued by its sweetness. Each night, the fire at Kushinada's house burned long after the rest of the village slept. Susanoo worked tirelessly, each movement a silent promise, to the family, to himself, to the world he had once wounded. As the day of reckoning approached, tension thickened in the air. Even the wind felt restless, shifting through the grass with nervous whispers. The stars, hidden behind heavy clouds, seemed to turn away, unwilling to witness what might come. Alone on the riverbank, Susanoo stood watch, listening to the heartbeat of the earth, feeling the weight of his choices. Once, I was only a storm, he thought. Tonight, I choose who I will be. Protector or destroyer. If I fall, let it be for something greater than pride. Night deepened. The world waited, caught between fear and hope. The storyteller's voice falls to a hush. On that night, when the stars hid behind clouds, Susanoo stood on the edge of destiny. The battle to come would decide not only the fate of a village, but the fate of his own soul. His path to redemption was just beginning. Dawn broke with a pale, trembling light as a hush settled over the valley. Every living creature seemed to sense the presence of something ancient and monstrous. The earth itself quivered as Yamata no Orochi, the eight-headed serpent, slithered from the mist. Its massive coils dragged across the stones, 8 sets of blazing eyes searching for its prey. Venom steamed from its nostrils, curling into poisonous clouds above the riverbank. There, standing firm at the edge of the trembling world, was Susanoo. His figure, battered by exile but unbroken, blocked the path to Kushinada. Every muscle was taut with resolve. The memory of old storms still lived in his eyes, but now it was joined by something new, a fierce, protective courage. He had not come to destroy, but to save. With steady hands, Susanoo placed the barrels of enchanted sake along the river's edge, exactly as he had planned. Their fragrance drifted on the morning breeze, mingling with the mist and luring the dragon ever closer. One by one, each of Orochi's terrible heads lowered to drink. Greedily they lapped up the potion, and as the powerful brew coursed through their bodies, their movements slowed. Their eyes grew cloudy, their tongues thick. Soon, a heavy silence filled the valley, the kind of silence that comes before a great storm or a miracle. Susanoo gripped his sword, now burning with a celestial light, and waited. For a heartbeat, all of nature seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a roar that shook the mountains, the beast collapsed, its heads weaving and snapping as sleep overtook them. Susanoo sprang forward, sword raised high, and the battle began. Lightning danced along the blade as he struck, each blow echoing like thunder. The ground trembled with every clash, the serpents' heads writhed and screamed, snapping at the air in fury and pain. One after another, the monstrous heads fell. But at the darkest moment, one of the dragon's heads, maddened with pain, lunged toward Kushinada, desperate for vengeance. Susanoo, bleeding and spent, hurled himself between the beast and the girl, catching the deadly fangs on his own blade. With a final, desperate effort, he drove the sword through the serpent's last heart. The dragon's body convulsed and shuddered, then grew still. As the toxic mist cleared, something gleamed amid the broken coils, a sacred blade, bright and ancient, the Kusanagi no Tsurugi. Susanoo lifted it with trembling hands, recognizing in its weight a symbol of hope, power, and new beginnings. Exhausted but triumphant, he turned to Kusanada and her family. Instead of keeping the sword for himself, he knelt and offered it to her, a gift of peace and protection for her people. All around, the village erupted in celebration. Children ran through the fields, elders wept with relief, and the family of Kusanada blessed Susanoo with prayers and gratitude. The festival echoed into the hills, a song of joy and renewal. For the first time in all his storms and wandering, Susanoo felt the warmth of dawn within himself, knowing he had not only saved, but given the world a reason to believe again. News of the victory traveled swiftly to the heavens. Amaterasu heard of her brother's deed, not with pride alone, but with quiet joy and understanding. She gazed down from her shining palace and whispered, "Now your shadow has become part of the light, brother." With the fall of Orochi, balance was restored. The sun shone clear and strong, rivers flowed with silver laughter, and gentle winds danced across the fields. People honored the gods with new faith, and even the smallest spirits of nature rejoiced. On the horizon, a brilliant rainbow stitched earth to sky, weaving sorrow into hope, night into the promise of day. The storyteller's voice becomes calm and gentle, as if offering a final blessing. So ended this tale, of light and shadow, of trials and forgiveness. May the sun and gentle wind always watch over your dreams, carrying you into peace. Thank you for spending this night with us. May this story bring you peace, harmony, and the sweetest dreams. Until we meet again in the world of myths and legends.